Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Reverend Todd. I'm happy to be sharing with you. I'm sorry this is a little late, but I was traveling over Thanksgiving and I'm just kind of finishing things up right now tonight. But what I want to talk about is that it's the beginning of Advent. It's the first Sunday of Advent right now, and Advent is about preparing the way for Jesus and preparing the world for Jesus, or preparing a place for Jesus. But what I want to talk about specifically today is preparing ourselves for Jesus in a certain way, specifically. And so I'm going to talk about Exodus chapter 2, which was the scripture that hopefully you read before this, because I'm not going to read through it. It's super long, but because you've had enough time to kind of read through it, I'm just going to kind of hit some of the high points, but to explain what was happening with Moses and how Moses is a hero. And sometimes we misjudge Moses, and we talk about certain parts of this story, and they're very popular, but other parts of this story we don't talk about. And also, we don't talk very much about the intricacies of this story. And I think that they're very, very important. And they're very, very important to Advent, even though this is not typically a scripture that's used for Advent. I think that it's very, very important. Now, we're reading through the book of Exodus in exile, in my church, Exile. And as we're going through Exodus, it feels like a very Exodus time right now, like being in the wilderness and wandering. But the beginning of this story is the story of Moses. And so Exodus chapter 2 has Moses being born at a time when the Pharaoh is killing all of the Hebrew boys, because the Pharaoh is trying to prevent an uprising of the Hebrew people, because they are slaves of the Egyptians. So the Egyptians are the rulers over the Hebrews, and when too many men, right, get born, then there can be kind of an uprising. And so there was some tension and some things apparently going on that's keeping the Pharaoh afraid. And so the Pharaoh starts to kill all of the male children. So as we read in the scripture, when Moses' mom, when Moses is born, right, he's a Hebrew boy. And so we know the famous story of Moses' mom sending him down the river in a little boat made of papyrus. And as Moses goes down, right, the Moses' sister goes and says, "Oh, this is the baby that Pharaoh's daughter finds Moses." And Moses' sister comes and says, "Oh, let me go find a Hebrew woman to help nurse this baby," because they could tell that Moses was Hebrew. And so the Pharaoh had a lot of compassion on Moses, and the daughter of the Pharaoh was like, "We need to take care of him, because once you get to know somebody, once you see a baby, it's a lot harder to see that baby be killed." And so Moses' mom actually got to raise Moses, which was super cool. And his sister had a lot to do with that. There's a lot of manipulation and Days of Our Lives stuff in this story, as you probably read. But as the story goes on, Moses is in a place of privilege. Moses is in a place where he is taken care of by the Pharaoh. He's taken care of by the Pharaoh's family. He is pretty much set up, even though all the other Hebrews are enslaved, and a lot of the boys were being killed. He was exempt from all of that because the Pharaoh's daughter showed compassion on him. So that's very important when we read the rest of this chapter, the rest of this story, because Moses had a lot to lose, because he was in a place where he was being taken care of better than he should have been, or better than his peers would have been. And so he has a lot that he's risking in this story. And I think that's a very important piece of the rest of this story. So it skips ahead in verse 11. And one day Moses had grown up, and he went out to where his own people were, and he watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and it was one of his own people. So he started to defend, right, his people. He knew who his people were, and as he started to defend this servant, this slave, he ended up killing the Egyptian man. But so we talk about how Moses was a murderer and Moses killed this man, but what we don't talk about is how he was really saving the life of one of his people. He was showing loyalty to his people, not only to risk of himself as he's in this fight, right, with the Egyptian, but at risk if somebody found out he was going to be in trouble, which is exactly what happens. And so as the story goes on, Moses sees two of his own Hebrew people fighting, and he doesn't have the same aggression toward them, right? Like, he tries to make peace, and it's like, why are you fighting? Y'all are on the same side. We need to be together and stick together. What Moses could have done is he could have just chilled in the Pharaoh's office and chilled in the Pharaoh's house and been taken care of and not put himself at risk, but he did it. He took the risk of his own privilege being taken away. He took the risk of his own life to do the right thing and to do the thing to protect his people. So a lot of times we don't talk about that or look at that in this story. So of course, when the Pharaoh hears about what Moses did, he wants to kill Moses and he's super upset. And so Moses runs away. And he runs away and he hides by a well. And when he sees these girls come to get water for their animals, and these shepherds come and make them run away. This isn't a very popular part of this story, but it's an important part of this story because Moses is being Moses. So Moses risks his own power and his own life and his own privilege to stick up for his people. And as he is doing this, he really looks at what is going on around him in a way that he has eyes of compassion and shows that this is Moses' character, his very character. And so when we start to see these women get run off by the shepherds, the animals aren't going to have water, the animals are also in danger. Moses gets out from hiding and runs off the shepherds, right? And then gives water to the animals. Shows compassion on the women, shows compassion on the animals. He showed compassion to the Hebrew people before who were slaves. All the people that are being bullied, all the people and animals that are not in power, Moses is showing compassion toward and taking up for them and defending them. Not just because he has the power to do so, but because he is risking his privilege and his power and his comfort in order to do it. So Moses is rewarded with the father of these women give one of them for his wife, because that's how things worked back then, which is kind of a funny part of the story to me, that was like, now you get a reward of $20 maybe, but back then it's like, oh, here, I have 7 of these daughters, take one to be your wife, which is very different, right, culturally from how things are now. And so it can be a little bit confusing, but that's just the way that things were, right? Women were property like other things, and that's how people treated their daughters and treated women at the time. And Moses was a good suitor and a good person that would take care of this man's daughter. Now, when we put this into perspective of our own lives, and we put this into perspective of what we are doing, what we are called to do in this Advent season, my question is, how do we be courageous? What are we willing to risk? What are we willing to give up? Sometimes it's easy to do the easy things. It's easy to do the safe things, but it's not always easy to do the courageous things and to risk something, to do something for someone else. And that's who Moses was. And we're going to read more as Exodus goes on about Moses doing big things, right? And freeing the Israelite people, freeing the Hebrew people from slavery, even when they didn't even want that sometimes as they're wandering around. And so Moses is this person of high character and high courage. And I want us to think about our courage. How much courage do we have this week? How do we prepare a place for Jesus in this Advent season in our lives like Moses prepared a place for God to work through him. There's a couple of ways I like to think about this, and one way is that God was testing Moses or preparing Moses to be able to do this big thing that God's about to ask him to do with the burning bush and those famous stories. And God is preparing him by giving him these smaller tasks, right? And these temptations or these situations of unjust activity that Moses feels really led to step into and to fix and to remedy, and to even to the point of killing one of the slave owners to protect his people. Another way to look at this is that Moses did these things because that's who Moses was, and Moses made these bold, courageous choices, and because of that, God wanted Moses to be the guy to free the people and asked him to do that. And so either way we think about it, and either way we look at it, we need to think about how we can show courage this week. How do we prepare a place to do the right thing? What are we willing to risk to do what is right versus just what's easy or simple to do? So let's think about that this week as our Advent journey begins, and I'll see you guys next week.